On today's episode of Meier Clinic's podcast, Dr. Paul Meier and Kristin are joined by Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Dwyer Hansen. Mark Victor Hansen is probably best known as the co-author for the Chicken Soup for the Soul book series and brand, setting world records in book sales with over 500 million books sold. Crystal Dwyer Hansen is a transformational life coach. She helps her clients read their inner compass to make the right changes so that they can follow their destiny path. You won't want to miss this episode. Thanks for tuning in.
To the extent that we live our lives in a manner that is consistent with the truth in our heart, we thrive.
Welcome to the Meier Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meier Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide, dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Dr. Paul Meier, I'm so glad you're doing this show with me today.
Well, I'm always happy to be with you, Kristin. I've been for years now.
I know it's been, 3 or 4 years now. I love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
And we also have Crystal and Mark here, which listeners you just heard about. Crystal, Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show.
We're so happy to be here with both of you.
It's our great pleasure.
Well, thank you.
We're excited.
I am too. And now I know Paul the way that he is, and our listeners know too. He is
absolutely.
a voracious reader. So I know that I downloaded the Audible book of Ask the
Me
Bridge.
too. I don't read. I listen.
Oh, you listen? Oh, I didn't know that. I
downloaded. I downloaded the book Ask and the Chicken Soup for the Soul one too.
Yeah.
But we want to focus on Ask.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to make sure listeners, it's Ask the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny, which was written by Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Dwyer Hansen. Or did I say that right? Dwyer?
It's actually Dwyer with that. I know that sneaky W, right? It's a little bit of a tongue twister.
Yes, I know. And I'm famous, as Paul knows, for if someone's last name is Smith, somehow I'll turn that into Smythe. And they're like, what? It's like a tick of mine. So we usually get emails saying, oh, you did it again. So that always cracks me up. But anyway, I'm so glad that you wrote this book. And what I love about this is what you said, Mark, just before we hit record, was when the mission is bigger than you, something happens that just makes it all work. And that's so right in line with what Paul and I believe as well.
Well, it turns out that we wrote this and we didn't know that we'd be going into COVID. And we're saying that, hey, look, you can't look at a caterpillar and predict butterfly. And we've all been in this cocoon. And during the cocoon, we're saying, hey, it is time to understand your destiny. And our subtitle is on Ask is Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. We think everyone has a destiny. We think it's a great destiny. And our destiny is to help you get to your destiny. And what's happened, because we've done so many phenomenal podcasts around the country and world, is that people are saying, hey, wait a second, they're budding up. They're going through every question and they're having a really good self-examination of their life and getting results they never thought, and repivoting, reinventing, and reorienting themselves in this strange time.
Yeah, definitely a strange time. Definitely a strange time. I'm curious, and I'm throwing this right out there, but what are some of the same questions that you get asked about the book? You think of a couple?
I think the big question is, why do people have such a hard time asking? Seems to be the universal question, because people recognize that in themselves. It's very hard to ask. And we talk about that in the book. We call it the 7 roadblocks to asking. And what we've found is that each one of us carries at least one, if not more, of those roadblocks. And we can talk a little bit more deeply about those, but those roadblocks are what are keeping us from literally achieving our destiny, because to go where you need to go, you need to ask the right questions, because that's the only way you'll find the answers. And so we love to ask people to really dive deeply into those 7 roadblocks and find out which ones resonate with them.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that, I've thought about that since our show too. And I don't think I told you, Mark, on the show we did together, but I started a company called Ask many, 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 many years ago.
Wow. No.
Yeah, it was a consulting company, and I was, but it was for ask, the word ask, and it also was the first initials of each of the 3 people that started the company.
I got you the K. That's
Very
it.
interesting.
Yep, exactly. So, but it's really hard. I know in my own life, and Paul, I want to ask you that too, but I know in my own life, I'll just keep my head down and keep going and going and going and going. And then I forget to look up. And I find that fascinating, because, when you just plod along forever and you don't stop and take a look at your life and what you're doing and where you want to go, you can do that for years.
As a psychiatrist, I really believe that the majority of people in the world are just stay in a rat race. They don't stop and ask, a lot of things about that. Like they work, they eat, they sleep, they get up and work, eat, sleep, and they go through life without digging inside themselves. And an awful lot of our thoughts, feelings, motives, self-concept is not even in our awareness. And a lot of it's formed in the first 6 years of life, the way our moms and dads treated us and things like that. And we've got a day program here where people come 7 hours a day, 5 days a week for about 3 weeks, who are going through a lot of depression and anxiety. They're having enough problems where they can't function at work or at college. And I saw people just this morning already. I saw one who is afraid to ask. And I thought, oh, that fits right in, because he's afraid to ask for anything, because he's afraid of rejection, and he's got a wall up. He loves people and wants to help people, but he's afraid if he gets too close, he's going to get hurt. And I shared with him a Paul Simon song. Paul Simon wrote a really cool song called Something So Right, where he's the person that has a wall up inside of him like that. Where he was afraid to ask. And he meets somebody that really loves him unconditionally and all that. And he says, it's hard to get used to somebody so right, for something so right. And he says, there's a wall in China, 1,000 miles long, to keep the foreigners out. They built it strong. But there's a wall inside me that no one can see. And it takes a long time to get next to me. And so through therapy, we're trying to get them to be able to ask. This guy's got so much potential and everything. And then another gal, and I won't take up. I don't want to take up. I don't want to be a narcissist here and take up time, but it just sort of fits. Another gal has bulimia, where you binge and vomit because of you're vomiting your life, and she was vomiting every day, and then with some therapy now, in just a matter of a couple of weeks, or about 3 weeks, a couple of weeks, a little bit more than a couple of weeks. She's only done that twice instead of every day, and she sheepishly, but she always admits it, so she sheepishly told me about it yesterday, and felt really horrible about it. I said, well, I think that's wonderful. She said, what? I said, I think that's wonderful. You went from every day to once every 8 days. I said, you're really making a lot of dramatic improvement, aren't you? So I never thought of it that way. So when people, when they have these I can't messages, it's they learned it somewhere. They had a parent or somebody in their lives that taught them you can't, or you don't deserve to ask. And so our goal as therapists and as psychiatrists is not to tell people what to do, but to tell them what we see, to be a mirror to them so they can see the truth. And I asked them, what would you tell your best friend under the same circumstances? So if your best friend went from vomiting every day to just vomiting once every 8 days and was working on it, would you tell her, would you bang her on the head with a book, or would you tell her she was a total failure, or what would you tell? No, so I said, well, then life's tough enough when just dealing with the truth. So, here you're dealing with lies too, the lies that you believe that you're a failure. And looking at the truth, that's why I love this book. Ask, it really helps people look at themselves. It's a good way, indirectly, using a parable, really, that's what Jesus taught with, using a parable to help people see that you can ask and you can find and discover, what you really want to do, what you're destined to do. And with God's help, you can overcome the obstacles that keep you from doing that. And seeing the truth is one of the biggest obstacles.
Wow. I love that. And it's so amazing to hear how, even these breakthroughs that you're seeing come from those, a series of asking questions and moving people to the next step in their progress. And, Mark and I discovered that there are actually 3 channels through which we need to ask. And those are ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And each of those channels is equally important, starting with that ask yourself part, because that's the self-reflection part, and so important in what you're talking about, to really understand ourselves. And we say, you cannot begin to understand where you want to go or need to go until you understand where you are. So there are really 3 critical phases to that asking yourself part. And that is, first critical phase is, where am I right now? Acknowledging, like, what's going on? How do I feel about it? How did I get here? What were the factors that contributed to this? Am I happy with it? Am I miserable? Is this something I want to keep going with for the rest of my life? That's the first critical phase. And then the second critical phase is really taking the time to acknowledge, and understand, where do I want to go in my life? Because so few people sit down with themselves and take that reflective time. We just keep, racing through life, like you were saying, and just, Kristin, a minute ago, just keep rolling through life and, keeping your head down, doing your thing. And we don't stop to ask ourselves, what's my ultimate dream for myself? Where do I really want to go? What do I really want to be doing every day? And Mark and I like to say, bring your imagination into this at this step, and imagine the greatest scenario. We really limit ourselves in our thinking, because we think, oh, well, how dare I think such big thoughts, but when we go to that ultimate place, what am I doing in my ultimate career expression? What am I doing in my greatest relationship expressions? What am I doing in my life purpose expression? What in the ultimate nth degree of success? What does that look like every day? And start asking those little sub questions. Who am I talking to? How do I show up? What matters to me? Who am I influencing? Who are my, clients? Whatever those questions are. But the point is, when you sit with yourself and say, where do I want to be in my life? That's the second critical phase. And then the final phase is, once you've determined those things, where am I now? Where do I want to be? The final phase is, what specific action steps do I need to take to get there? Again, sometimes, we don't put our asking journey into action. And that's such an important part of it. But just those 3 simple phases of questioning can be profoundly transformational in someone's life.
I think too, that the part about deserving, feeling like you deserve to even ask. I mean, it is your life, but there's so many. I mean, I know for me, I had people in my life as a very young child that would, anytime I got too excited, which, Paul has seen me get all excited, and you have this problem too, Paul, where we get so excited
absolutely.
about something. And I remember as a little kid, my grandma and this other woman that was like a grandma would say, oh, getting a little too big for your britches.
Yeah.
And I still play that tape, and I've worked on it a lot in therapy and all those things, but that still is there. And in one way, it helps me stay humble, I think, but in another way, it's really, it's really clamped down on my ability to ask for myself.
Right, Kristin. And so many of us have experienced those things. And children come into this world so beautiful, so uncorrupted. They ask for everything. They want to know who, what, when, where, why, how. And they also have this, urge to just ask for more. And that really is how God created us. That's the natural human spirit coming alive and evolving every day. But like you said, Kristen, through a parenting, grandparents, other family members, maybe through our schooling, through the jobs that we've had, just through basic life rejection, we start to get that beautiful curiosity, that beautiful desire to ask for things. We get that crushed out of us, where we then start to feel, first of all, ashamed for even wanting more things. We start to feel ashamed that we don't know everything and that we would need to ask what something is, because why wouldn't we already know that? And so what Mark and I are saying is we want to bring that beautiful curiosity back to life already inside each one of us, and just, take the time with going through these 7 roadblocks and seeing which one resonates with you, which one do you identify with? Is it the unworthiness, which is that conditioning from our childhood that kind of just tells us maybe we don't deserve better? Like, how dare you? Don't get too big for your britches, kind of thing. And all of the others. And we can go through them if you'd like. Each one's a little bit different and important.
Crystal, let's talk about those 3 components and delve into what they mean in a way of really inspiring someone to first get the book, to have a guide for what you're saying, and then also to really think about. What I like is when someone listens to a podcast, then they, that stays with them. Like I don't remember every show since I do so many, but I remember the show that I just did with Mark because it made me think about, how do I do that? How does that apply to me? Because when you're someone who gives a lot to others, that's another thing that you can do, to forget to ask for yourself.
Boy, is that true. I really can relate to that. So yeah, so we'll go into some of the 3, ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And, asking yourself is really, like we said, that reflective journey, so important for us to really discover what's inside of ourselves. And as a transformational life coach, I tell people that, while it appears that your life is being created outside of you, the reality is that, you see the world outside of you, and it feels like, things are coming at you and you're ducking and dodging and trying to keep all the balls up in the air. But the reality is your life experience, how you experience your life, is created from the inside out. So that asking yourself part is such an important part of how you create your life experience. The asking others is really the way we bond with other people. Being a good asker creates tremendous bonds. And the research that we looked at, it's really funny because we've been talking about the fears people have, to ask for anything. But if you look at all of the research that's being done, people who were going into the studies, when going in, they had the perception that if they asked, they would be perceived as being, obnoxious, pushy, uninformed, stupid, all of these things. But the opposite was true. The studies found the opposite was true, that you are 80% more likely to get your request granted if you just get out there and ask and stop holding back. And so there's just tremendous evidence that shows like there's no reason not to ask. So we need to really get over these roadblocks. The other part of it was that people who are good askers in business relationships and in personal relationships, from the perspective of being a curious person, wanting to know more information, wanting to get to know more about someone, those people who are the better askers were found to be more likable in business relationships and in personal relationships. And in one study that Harvard did, they showed that daters who asked more questions of the other person were more likely to get a second date. So
absolutely.
Right? So this perception that we go,
yeah, absolutely.
Right. So we're oh, I can't ask. I know that's pushy. That's nosy. That's this. That's that. Or they.
If you go out, if you went out on a date with somebody, a first date with somebody, and all you did was talk about yourself, I don't think that person would want a second date. Hopefully, unless they had a narcissistic father or a narcissistic mother, and that's what they were used to. But asking others is real important, whether you're developing a relationship or in a long-term relationship too. In psychiatry, that's one of the main things that we do to help people is assertiveness training, we call it, learning to be assertive, and it involves some humility too, and not just pride. It involves humility, because you're admitting to somebody that there's things that you don't know that you'd like to get their opinion on. I think that's really nice.
Paul, the joke that goes with what you just said is the guy goes out on his first date, talks about himself endlessly for 2 hours, at the end of which he said, enough about me. What do you want to know about me?
Yeah, I heard that. That's a great one. Yeah,
I think you've told that one on the show. I have a question then, okay, because Paul and I are people, and obviously you guys are too, we're people that get asked a lot. Like I have this guy, I love him dearly. He's so sweet. But every time that he calls me, he's asking me to do something for him. And I get a lot of people that, want me to do something for them. And it's my own thing that I don't turn around and say, hey, can you do this for me? Now, it's not that I don't ask. In fact, I'm going to ask you all something, because I'm like, I got to ask them something at the end of our show. But I wonder, what that is. The part about where people just keep asking and have no problem with, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Not that we're going to a narcissism scale, because there's that too, but also the trepidation of turning around and asking someone who does that a lot, well, here's what you could do for me.
Right. Well, what it comes back to is Emerson wrote all this stuff at Transcendentalism. And what he said is it's a law of reciprocity, where if I ask you for something, you get to ask me for something. And there should be, an equality there, a fairness, an agreement. And what happens is that I have no idea what you're going to ask me for, but because I see you so eminently fair, if you need more clients or you need an endorsement or something like that, not only am I going to say yes, but I'm going to be proactive, because I'm a scholar in a lot of people, as you can imagine, but one of which is my hero, Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, and he endorsed everything. And I just,
it sounds like Paul.
You guys see that. And if you haven't seen Mark Twain tonight, either on video, on YouTube, or somewhere, and if you get a chance to see Hal Holbrook, I got to have dinner with Dr. Hal Holbrook, who got his degree at Yale, did a lot of great movies, but he did Hal Holbrook.
Oh, I love him.
Mark Twain just could see stuff so honestly and innocently that you couldn't resist loving him and laughing.
Yeah, that's my favorite character in any movie ever, was the character he played in Wall Street. Remember that movie with Charlie Sheen, where the scene was Charlie Sheen was getting all, the corner office and the this and the that, and Hal Holbrook comes by, and I didn't know he was Dr. Hal Holbrook. We're talking about the same person, right? I'm not mixing up.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Guys, I'm famous for doing that too. Well, not famous, but anyway. Anyway, back to the point is where he's like, okay, kiddo, don't get too, I'm seeing a lot of guys coming up and they do questionable things, and, just, you got to be that one that just keeps on doing your thing in order to make it, especially in this kind of a business. I remember when I first saw that, which was years and years and years ago. And I thought, oh, I want to be that guy. The one that just keeps on plugging, doesn't get too caught up in the hoopla, but just keeps on, rising appropriately. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what happens is that, like I said, we're even proactive. Like when we finished that last podcast together, I said, is it okay if I send you some of my other superstar friends? Because not only do I want to help them, but every one of us needs exposure, and more people are listening to podcasts now. I'm told 7.5 hours a week, because they're getting tired of negative news. And I'm sure, as a psychiatrist, Paul would say,
absolutely.
Negative,
I encourage my patients not to even listen to the news a lot of the times.
So you and I
I've been shocked.
All four of us are on the same page on that one.
Right, exactly. And
I've been shocked during the pandemic, because I heard that we're probably going to get a lot more clients and stuff like that, because of all the stress before going through. And at first we didn't, but now we are. But and most of one thing that surprised me is how well I've got about 300 clients see, because I just see them for 15 minutes once every 2 or 3 months for medicine checks and brief. I don't really do therapy anymore like I used to, an hour sessions and stuff, but I do short stuff, and and most of them are doing pretty well. And the ones that are having the most distress are the ones that are getting distressed by watching too much news. They're distressed about our country, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Or by staying at home with their mate 24 hours a day, 5 days, 7 days a week.
right.
That distresses them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meier of the Meier Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meier Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
That's amazing. And Mark and I, fortunately, are used to working together all the time. So that has not been an adjustment for us. And we both each have, separate large offices in our home. So not that much has changed for us, but I know it's been very stressful to other people. But I just wanted to wrap that up on, asking others and being a resource. It's just so important to understand in this life that we cannot live this life alone. We cannot be successful. No one can be successful in this life without relying upon others to accomplish.
Absolutely.
We are here to be a resource to one another. So asking is a critical function of making that happen. And the other side of that is something we call becoming a granter of wishes. And, so that's the other blessing in this whole, picture, is that when you are able to grant someone's request, something really amazing happens inside of you. It actually raises your self-esteem because you've done something good. So, we try, if there's a way to help people, we try to help people. And,
right.
And it comes back on you in a surprising way. When Crystal and I were falling indefatigably in love, and I just couldn't keep my eyes off her, we're sitting at Mother's Market in Costa Mesa having dinner, a green dinner, and the guy sitting next to us is a man of the cloth, probably 90 years old, white collar, black outfit. And he says, I just can't help seeing how in love you guys are. Do you want to know the secret to staying happily married forever? A question like that is pretty well led. So I said, yeah, I think I'd like to know that. So he says, well, I've been head of Billy Graham Ministries on the marital part for 70 years. So I'm pretty close on my age guess. And he said, the one thing we found out at Dr. Graham's is that if you want to be happily married, you got to pray out loud in the morning, at night. And every morning, Crystal and I start out with an hour of prayer and meditation, and where we're resculpting our life. And somebody asked me in one of the podcasts, well, what does that look like? I said, well, we happen to love Italy second most to America. So we go to Florence once when we could have done that. And in Florence, you go to see the David, which is a sculpture we all know. And they asked Michelangelo, how you make a David? He said, I chip out everything not David. Well, you and I are here, I think, on this podcast to chip out all the negativity. And you can only do that with sculpted questioning.
I love that.
Yeah, and it takes other people to, it takes, no man's an island, right? No man stands alone. We just can't make it alone. We have to have others in our lives. And asking and there's nothing, like you said, it is better to give than to receive. And people that are narcissistic are the most miserable people in the world. And people that learn to love and be loved are the happiest people in the world. And we do need to have boundaries on the people that would ask us so much that they'd be taking advantage of us, and so having boundaries is good. But
we've done many a show about that, haven't we, Paul?
Yeah. In fact, I'll tell a quick story here. When I finished my psychiatry residency at Duke many back in the 1700s. I'm 212 years old now. But anyway, when I finished my residency at Duke, I turned down lucrative jobs to teach full time at a seminary for $12,600 a year because I thought I'd do more good by. I had a part-time private practice, but I thought I'd do more good by training pastors to do good counseling than that way I could affect thousands of people, maybe millions. And fortunately, there weren't any books on Christian psychology, so I had to write one for each course, and the first two sold 1 million each. So it turned out to be a good idea, in hindsight. But I had a bad habit of saying yes to everything I was asked to do, and I was teaching at Trinity Seminary for a little while up in Chicago, and I was seeing students at our home at night for free for marital counseling. I was doing charity work in the ghetto on Saturdays. I was doing psychiatry part-time and teaching full-time, and lots of times I'd be speaking at churches on Sundays, and I was burning out. And I got up one morning and read that passage in the Bible where Jesus said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." And I remember slamming my Bible shut and throwing it down on the bed and practically shaking my fist at God and saying, how can you say that your burden is light? It's overwhelming. I'm getting burned out. But I called up my psychiatry buddy that I went to residency with, Frank Minert, and I said, "Hey, Frank, give me some advice." So I asked, I'm glad I asked. I said, "Give me some advice. I'm trying to do everything God wants me to do, and I'm getting burned out. And yet the Bible says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And he said, he told me something that I should have known as a psychiatrist. He said, "Paul, God's not German." I said, "What?" And he said, "Your dad was German, and if you got all A's and a B, he would tell you, why'd you get that B?" And so you keep thinking you're obeying God by doing everything that you're asked. And he said, God's not, if he says his burden is light and his yoke's easy, then it is. So quit doing so much. Figure out what your calling is and just do that. But when you're a child growing up and you're learning how to say your goodnight prayers, you're thinking, "Dear heavenly version of my earthly father." Because when you pray, "Dear heavenly father," of course, that's what you're thinking. Oh. And so we tend to get our view of God messed up. And so sometimes when we ask God what to do, we got to be careful that we're asking the real God, and not the extension of our father or mother or whichever parent was more dominant, and find out what the real God wants to help us do. And I think he gives us a lot of rope. I think we do have a destiny, but I think that we are we get to choose our destiny. A lot of people come in my office crying and say, "Dr. Meier, I just don't know who I am." And I tell them, it doesn't really matter who you are. What do you, they think it's an insult. I said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, it doesn't matter who you are as much as who do you want to be, because you can make choices. You can fulfill your dreams. And again, that's what I loved about the book Ask. It talks about fulfilling dreams. And go ahead, I'll butt out now. I'm sorry, I took up too much time here.
Well, no, that's all so great. And it leads right into the asking God part, because we feel like that's such an important part of the asking journey. And, my favorite way to ask God is, God, you created me with whatever talents and abilities are there. Can you please show me what my greatest expression is? And I think that evolves. And I think we do have somewhat of an ultimate destiny if we were expressing, our greatest expression in every way. So, but that question needs to come up every day, because life happens and we all get off track, so that's sort of how I check in with myself and God. I want to be all God's created me to be, whatever that is. And so when we continue to ask, the answers continue to flow to us. And it's a journey, no doubt. It's a journey. And it's a beautiful journey if you just let it unfold. And I think people get too caught up with the destination. And that's when we start to become really miserable, because we're like, well, I was supposed to have this or do this by now. Some of the most miserable people, I was just listening to a podcast about this yesterday. This guy went to his reunion, went to an Ivy League school. He said 80% of the people who had, many millions of dollars were on their second spouse, really hated their life and didn't understand their purpose. So it's not about achieving this one specific thing. It's really about, asking your way through life and letting the unfoldment of your life happen, but always continuing to ask God how you fit into this kingdom. what is my role in this beautiful kingdom? What is my role in this beautiful, magnificent, living universe? I mean, the universe is alive and full of so many beautiful things. It's so full of wonder, but we're so caught up in, did I achieve this one thing today? That we lose the wonder of life instead of just getting into the journey and asking about it all the time, being just wildly curious about all of it, and really seeing and anticipating the magic that's there for us.
I hope you're listening to Crystal right now about asking and developing day by day, and not just living for selfish things too. The highest, as a psychiatrist, the research shows that the highest suicide rate in every major city is in the wealthiest suburb. The wealthiest suburbs have the highest suicide rate. Doesn't mean, that I mean, there's a lot of happy, rich people. There's nothing wrong with being rich and happy. I'd rather be rich and happy than poor and happy. But I'm just glad I'm happy. But there's a lot of people that no matter what they earn, if you can earn a lot of money, and if you don't have love, if you don't spend time loving and being loved by your family and friends and kids, then your life can be miserable. And a reporter asked John D. Rockefeller, when he was the wealthiest man on earth a long time ago, she asked him, Mr. Rockefeller, how much money will it take to make you happy? And he said, that's a good question, young lady. He scratched his chin a minute. He said, just a little bit more than I'll ever have. I thought that was a pretty good answer. Just a little bit more than I'll ever have. So if you're living for money as your main goal, then you'll never be happy.
So Paul, I just am flashing on, I'm hearing you 100%. The question isn't, who am I? The question is, where do I want to be? And what I think you're saying is the people that are unhappy, and we did a whole story in our book, Greg Haig he had, 2 jets, multiple homes, traveled around the world, a lot of cars, but he wasn't happy. And his best friend said, well, what is your purpose that is divine every day? And you got to ask yourself that. And so I think your statement, as I hold up the mirror and look back, and I want to make sure you are agreed, all those people that are unhappy also aren't struggling. They're not challenging themselves. And that's why we're saying, hey, look, we're creating an ask movement where you ask somebody. And what we've discovered in, the countless letters we're now getting back after just a few months the book is out, is that the people that buddy up and go through every question resculpt who they can become. Because, you could be rich and say, well, all I want to do is have $10 million. And now you got 10 million. You go, look around, you don't have any friends, you don't have any life, you don't have any desire, and you're apathetic. Whereas what we're saying is, look, every day ought to be a challenge. And let me just go one step further, because some of the listening families, senior, I did a book with Art Linkletter when he was 98 years old, young, because I say, never call yourself old. That's besmirching human spirit as far as I'm concerned. And the Bible says, thou shalt live, Genesis 6:3, 120, and I'm going to live be 127 with options for renewal, because I don't ever want to be average. So the point is that, and Crystal and I spent a lot of time with Art Linkletter, and everyone knows him for hula hoop and kids say the darndest things and all that. But he was always challenging himself, and that's why he lived such a long, rich, full life. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Totally.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we need to remember that money is just a medium of exchange on this earth, right? It just allows us to exchange things. There are other mediums of exchange. Sometimes we just exchange favors and barter things, but it's a medium of exchange. So it does serve an important role, but the goal can't be just to have more of the medium. And people who, money doesn't make you unhappy or happy. It just allows you to do more. If you have more money, you can do more things if you're a happy person. But oftentimes money can make you very miserable too. So the happiness starts inside with, taking this asking journey and discovering what you're really here for and what this life is about, and letting that magic unfold.
Psalm 139 is a beautiful chapter on that. In the Bible, it says that we were designed in our mother's womb. When our little arms and legs were just little buds, we were designed in our mother's womb, and God gave us certain strengths, like Crystal and Mark just shared. God gave us certain strengths, and there's some things that we're lousy at. And I get lost in my house, and I got a small house, but God gave us certain gifts, and designed it, and it says with one arm he hugs us, and with the other arm he leads us, and it's mostly behind the scenes. We don't see him doing that often, but there's little coincidences that keep happening in our lives where God's giving us little hints and guiding us and things like that. But like Mark and Crystal are saying, pray that God will show you what it is that he equipped you with the most, that you can use to love and be loved with. You can use to help other people.
What that intrinsically says to me is that not only are you supposed to take care of yourself, like the Bible says in Acts, and then your spouse, and then your kids, and then your family, city, state. But right now we're co-chair people of Childhelp, which has helped 10.5 million kids get out of abuse, neglect, and sex trafficking. So I think the other subtle thing
awesome.
here, when you're in that womb, what you're saying in Psalm 139, is that you're supposed to see that you've got a bigger task ahead of you. It's not just taking care of yourself, because the miserable rich people or poor people in their house aren't sourcing and serving someone else. Because at the Last Supper, the boys asked, Master, what do we do to become great? And he said, the greatest amongst you is servant of all. And you and I are here to serve. And I think it goes through one more thing, if I can vamp on and rant on. And that is, in the beginning, God created, all the way to Genesis 28. And it says, made in the image and likeness. My understanding that is that you and I are here our whole life, birth to death, two C's. One is create, and the others contribute. And the people that are unhappy, it seems to me, in my experience, are not contributing.
Well, can I add one thing to that? It's really about having a purpose greater than yourself.
Right. Yes.
Because what you talk
Absolutely.
about, the most miserable people are the most narcissistic people. We know that. We all know that. We see it again and again.
Yeah.
What I say, it's sort of like, if you're looking through a camera lens, and you're only focused on yourself, and this is all there is, and it's all about me, me, me. When you start asking God and contemplating this universe, this kingdom, it's like, pulling the lens back and looking at everything, and everything finally opens up. And quite frankly, it takes the pressure off. It's not all about you. So just let it go. It's you're a part of this wondrous kingdom. And isn't that wonderful? But when you accept the idea that, you're here to maybe serve a purpose greater than you, it changes everything inside. It really takes away. Suddenly you don't have that narcissistic focus, and you tend to get a lot more peaceful inside.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, when I was young, I wanted to. My dad was a carpenter, and my mom was a third grade educated maid, and I just wanted equal opportunity. And in America, I had that. There's a lot of young people today, and there's good young people today, just like there were always. But there's a lot of young people today for various reasons. I don't know if it's the helicopter parents or whatever, but there's a lot of young people today that instead of wanting equal opportunity, they want equal results. They want the benefits of without making the efforts. And so narcissism doesn't pay. Narcissistic people are the most miserable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I think it started with those participation trophies, right? I mean, those don't build.
Yeah.
Right. We know, there's something so beautiful that changes inside of us when we accomplish something from our own effort.
And also when we lose. I mean, I think people, we learn so much when we lose. We learn how to fail, because you know what? I don't care how much money someone has or how much fame or well-knownness, whatever it is, if their road that took them on that journey, which is not better than someone else's, it's just their journey, but that road that they took on their journey is so much more paved with failure than it is with success.
Yeah.
So if you don't learn how to fail, you are just setting yourself up for not being able to handle life.
Amen.
My client this morning, who felt so bad because she had vomited last night, I said, well, I'm glad it happened. She said, why? I said, we learn a lot more from failure than we do from success. So what can you learn from that? What was it that you were feeling and thinking about that resulted in that? And it was right after a phone call from a certain significant person, other in her life, and so that's what she's going to focus on in therapy, to dig out the root problems. Mark Twain you talk about Mark Twain. Mark Twain said, "It's not what you eat that gives you indigestion; it's what's eating you."
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I love that.
100%. Well, I love that you both wanted to come on Dr. Paul Meier's podcast today. I want to make sure that our listeners hear the name of the book again. It is called Ask: The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. It's written by Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Dwyer Hansen. I said it right
And
that
it's
time.
awesome.
And it's
awesome.
so good. It's such a good book.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure they also know where they can find both of you. So, Mark, will you go first and let them know what your website is?
Yes, we'd love them to get the book at Ask The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny at Amazon, because not all bookstores are open, and then go to askthebookclub.com. And we'd love everyone we want to help train them to become master askers, whatever their vocation is, because everyone's got a destiny to be fulfilled. And then Crystal?
Yeah, and then if you reach out to us, we love staying in touch with our friends and fans, and it's just nice to be connected. So we're both on social media. I'm at Crystal Dwyer Hansen, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of the above. And Mark, of course, is Mark Victor Hansen at all of these. Well, Mark Victor Hansen on all the social media outlets. So yeah, please stay in touch. And we want to hear about your journey. We've gotten so many cool letters from people who have read the book, and it's just so heartwarming to us. So yeah, if you pick up the book audiobook, Kindle, any form. It's a beautiful hardcover at Amazon. And please join us at askthebookclub.com as well.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. And of course, Paul, thank you.
Yep, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm following them on Twitter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I signed up, yep.
Our listening family.
I'm not on Facebook. So I'm following you on Twitter.
And our listening family, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Meier Clinics podcast on Mental Health News Radio Network. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.